this is Marlene, and a warm welcome from Glasgow, Scotland to all around the world. In this series of Marlene and Friends, I'll be sharing with you the most amazing group of people who have all the skills and expertise to make our world one of health and peace for all who live here, humans and non-humans alike. My guest this week is the fun-loving and warm-hearted comrade of the soul, Dr. Douglas Lisle, who delivers his work with great chi and will have you all hooked with his charismatic energy. Douglas completed his PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Virginia, where he was awarded the President's Fellowship and was a DuPont Scholar. He was then appointed lecturer in psychology at Stanford University and worked on the research staff at the Department of Veterans Affairs at the National Center for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder in Palo Alto, California. You will learn so much from this genius, and by reading his book, The Pleasure Trap, co-written with Dr. Alan Goldhammer, you will understand why and if you are stuck in a self-destructive rut. In his research and clinical interests, they have broadened out to include health and wellness, self-esteem, relationship satisfaction, the treatment of anxiety disorders and depression, and optimizing achievement motivation. In addition to all this work with esteem dynamics, Doug is currently the Director of Research for the True North Health Centre and also serves as the psychologist for the McDougall Wellness Programme, both located in Santa Rosa, California. Hi, I'm Marlene Watson-Tara in Service for a Healthy World. My guest today is the wonderful and inspirational Dr. Douglas J. Lisle, who is the founder of an incredible method of approaching human psychology and well-being. Dr. Lisle describes this approach as esteem dynamics, and its core insights adapted from a revolutionary biological approach to psychology. Dr. Lisle has been the clinical psychologist at True North Health in California for over 30 years. He's published numerous articles in the scientific literature, and he's the co-author of the hugely successful book, The Pleasure Trap. He's well known as one of psychology's most innovative and curious minds. Feeling good is something that we all want, right? We all want to be happy, but that's actually too abstract, as the doc's just about to tell you. So I am delighted to share with you all this gifted and wonderful human being who is the most incredible psychologist with a big warm heart, an incredible sense of humour, and Doug will make you feel good just by being in the room with him. Dr. Lisle, a huge big warm welcome from everybody here in Scotland.
Oh, fantastic. It's just great. Thank you for having me, Marlene.
Well, you know, your work is just groundbreaking, and as the founder of Esteem Dynamics, when and why did you launch this method of approaching human psychology and well-being?
Well, because none of the other approaches were any good.
I love it. Perfect answer. Moving right along.
Yeah. Actually, it was a funny thing that happened. Self-esteem has always been sort of, it's at the core of it's at the back of every clinician's mind, because when people come in, they're hurting in some way, and they're not feeling that confident about themselves. And so I hadn't really analyzed it very well, and then I came across you just go about your business,
Sure.
But then I came across an article by a remarkable or a very distinguished social psychologist by the name of Mark Leary, who is now the head of the department at Duke. And he had done something that nobody else had thought to do, which was, I don't even think he intended it. And that's sometimes the best science is done almost by accident. And he decided to test, along with other things he was doing with group dynamics, to see about people's, what they reported about their self-esteem before and after they were told that a group that they had interacted with was going to meet again, and that the person had either been invited to be in the group or had been rejected.
Wow.
And he was measuring other things, but he also measured, one of the scales he had was a self-esteem scale. And to his surprise, when they looked at the data, the people's self-esteem plummeted if they got negative feedback, or it rose dramatically when they got positive feedback. And that may not be shocking to you, but to a psychologist, we're all told that self-esteem is this thing that you can only give to yourself, and it sort of came from your parents slowly, so it shouldn't be so dynamic. Wow. And so here Leary is seeing that that the self-esteem, the feelings of self-esteem were incredibly dynamic. And he started to think about self-esteem as not the way we think of it normally, but instead of thinking of it as what he calls a sociometer or a meter for essentially tracking how much cachet or status we have in a social group. And he's really the first one to be thinking about this from essentially the perspective of human natural history. And he quickly came to the conclusion that being included and invited in a social group is probably the most critical survival fact of human life. And it's more important than the weather. It's more important than how recently you've eaten, because really you're going to live you're either going to survive or you're going to die really as a group in our ancient history. And so he started realizing, well, now wait a second. Probably the most important thing that is associated with your survival and also your reproductive success is whether or not you're included in the group or being rejected by the group. And so through that experiment, he published, and it was a very surprising finding. And then something interesting happened. All the critics came out of the woodwork in psychology, and they said, well, you're just experimenting with a bunch of young people who are don't have their sense of self formed yet, and so therefore they're very impressionable. Everybody knows about college students. And so he went out and then hand-picked a bunch of the toughest people anybody could find. And just real arrogant people that said, I don't care what anybody thinks about anything. Yeah. And he put them in exactly the same paradigm and got exactly the same result. So it turns out that he indeed found something that I'm sure the sages have been said many times before, but he now correctly identified for the first time, which is that our self-esteem is highly dependent on feedback from others, and that we're actually designed by nature to try to do things that cause us to be invited and included and valued. And so my work now is more triangulated. When someone is struggling and they're not feeling good about themselves, I'm very quick to try to figure out where is it that you're getting rejection cues from your social environment, because the bad feelings you have are a warning sign to tell you, it's an ancient warning sign that they're going to tell you you're going to get kicked out of the group, even though you're not going to be on the side of the you're not going to be on the side of the jungle, starving, but you feel like you will. And so figuring out how we're going to become more valuable winds up being a very important key to human happiness.
I mean, it's so easy, as you've just said, right? I mean, like I tell everybody, I'm interviewing Dr. Douglas, I love him. So I have no problem in acknowledging that, but so many people, Doug, they can't express or acknowledge another human being. In fact, I've got an interview I'm doing next week with an incredible chef who's done amazing work in the world, and she feels, very suppressed about not anyone acknowledging or saying, congratulations, you've done this. I mean, Bill Tara, my husband, laughs and says, if someone smiles at me in the street, I send them a thank you card, right? So, yeah. I mean, we all want to be acknowledged for whatever reason, right? But what you've just said is just like a fantastic way to express esteem dynamics. Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes, it's very, there's a few other things I would point out just for your listeners so that they get a feel for, this seems sort of obvious, but here's something that isn't so obvious. And that is that you can imagine two people in the village out of 30 people, and we're going to call one of them number 15 ranked person and the other one number 16 ranked. In terms of their general abilities, they're both very similar in their abilities of what they can bring to the village. But let's assume that one of them becomes more expressive about how they value other people. All right? So now, if they become more expressive about that, then the person that's hearing that is being valued, actually now considers that individual more valuable than the other one.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like suddenly it winds up, the danger that people have, and the reason why we aren't more effusive and warm about acknowledging other people is because if we're in that village, we are actually, we don't want to give competitors positive feedback. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We don't want to sing their praises. They're a competitor.
Yeah.
So it turns out that human beings are remarkably reticent about giving each other positive feedback. But it's interesting that giving people positive feedback is actually one of the most attractive things that you can personally do.
Sure.
And so this is so sometimes when so where this becomes valuable is not just telling you to change who you are as a person, but particularly when interpersonal processes are in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
When people are in argument or they're in conflict, it turns out that usually the very best move that you can make is to, instead of defending your position, turn around and start giving the other person credit. And if you do that, very quickly they will reciprocate, and you will change the esteem dynamic from one of problem to one of support. And in husbands and wives and in friends and even colleagues that are arguing, this is the way to do it. And certainly the Buddhists have known, of course, everything forever.
Yeah.
It's just that there are wise people that know this intuitively, but I did not really know it intuitively myself. But when I started to understand these underlying processes, it becomes clear to me, even though it may not come naturally. But the right move when in trouble is to actually give positive feedback, and that spins the dynamic the other direction.
It's a fantastic explanation, and just what you've said there, so many people are suppressed or oppressed or whatever. Now, if you say a kind word to someone, it just changes their whole day, right? You are the happiest psychologist on the planet. You are so loved. You're so, I said to everybody, you feel great just being in the room with you, because when you're in someone's energy, exchanging chi, I know, like yourself, you have so many clients, and sometimes you feel like, you've got nothing else to give, but I always teach with humour, and it makes a huge difference, because I'm a humorist, I'm a fun, happy person myself, even though I've had, like everybody else, stories and traumas and dramas, but it comes for me from the food, as you do too. When you're strong in your kidneys and you're strong in your gut, you can go out and fight Goliath, right?
Absolutely. You got it. That's the foundation of it all.
Well, the perspective, what perspective must be understood, I want to kind of get you into that a little bit deeper for people, their wants, their needs, their desires, their plans to start making sense, this is hugely helpful for me too as a teacher, because sometimes I think if I can't help the person to move forward, I failed. But I haven't failed. I'm the person with the tools. I have to give them the tool bag and they have to go do the work. But you are the expert. So what perspective must all the listeners understand for their wants, their needs, their desires, and their plans to start making sense to them?
Well, there's so many things to consider. I think that people naturally have goals and desires. That's what your sort of fantasies and your dreams are about. And what they're doing is, those are actually, my first perspective is that I want people to take those seriously. Now, I don't mean every fantasy you have, Marlene.
I'll share it with you later.
The point is that our imaginations often drift towards things that are quite realistic, but we haven't reached yet, and that we actually want. And so that is how that system works. Okay. And some of us have very wild imaginations, all the way out to Walter Mitty crazy things. Sure. I wanted to be Captain Kirk, by the way. That never turned out. But the point is that but I want people to take those seriously, because a lot of times when they're unhappy, it's because they actually have some of those dreams in their mind, but they're not doing anything to make them happen. And they're frustrated, and they feel like their life is kind of without meaning or without purpose. And so they're feeling kind of empty, and they don't have any confidence that they could make it happen. And so the first thing that I begin with is to actually, number one, take your dreams seriously, because they're actually very important. And they are cues to you. They're actually a signal to you to tell you what you ought to be moving towards. And in the same way that when you have if you have a sprained ankle, the pain is telling you don't walk on it. If you're hungry or thirsty, that's a signal to tell you what to do. And if you are having a dream that keeps percolating around in your mind, that's actually probably the best guess there is about what's going to make you very content in life. And so the next thing, though, is that those dreams are almost always competitive. There's always some competitor out there that's actually doing that dream, and we're trying to bring that process to the village. And so then what I want people to know is that the other people that are your competitors, they don't have any secret sauce. They don't have some magic that you don't have. And so instead what we need to realize is that most people accomplish their dreams through nothing other than actually what I call the execution of the fundamentals.
Yeah.
So if you want to be a painter, and then your job is to actually work on the fundamentals of painting, and then there's the second perspective is there isn't any magic. Those people may have some advantages over you. You may have some advantages over them. But the point is that you can absolutely compete in the market process, and there's room for more than one singer and one dancer and one painter and one vegetarian psychologist. In other words, there's plenty of room. So therefore, it may not seem like it, but your job is actually to work on the fundamentals that are required to do something well. And the fundamentals are actually fundamentally not difficult. Just small little pieces, and every beautiful production, whether it's a movie or whether it's a career or whether it's a great relationship, is actually just a string of little pearls. Okay? So they don't take the cameras out and shoot a Steven Spielberg movie in 3 days following some actor around. They do it little 10 seconds at a time. And they just do that little part, and then they go on to the next part. And it's useful for people to realize, even though something that you see that somebody do looks magnificent or impossible, the truth is that it really wasn't that complicated. Okay? And so this helps empower people as they see that the secrets of achievement are actually nothing other than the grinding details of doing small fundamentals. And the third thing is, the final thing is to and this is where a lot of the way I think winds up lining up with a lot that comes from the Buddhists. And that is that Buddhists would have you not pay attention to the outcome at all and not care. But I don't think we can do that. Because we care, because we're humans. We want love, we want acceptance, we want success. We want to have what we give the world to be valued. And so we want to be esteemed. And so you can't not care about that. But what I try to encourage people to do is to realize that we can't control that. All we can control is our work on the fundamentals. So I can't guarantee someone who is unhealthy that whatever it is that we're going to cure it. But what I can tell them is your job is to work on the fundamentals of health. And if you do those well, that something important will happen. Number one, you will absolutely improve. But the second part is that you have what I call an internal audience. That is not actually the people in the village, but it's a little village that lives inside your mind. It's really what makes us unique. And the internal audience that may be giving you very bad feedback now because it knows you're not doing that good a job, when you start doing those fundamentals and you start grinding on those things to try to do them as well as you can, the internal audience starts to respect you. Okay? It basically says, I appreciate what you're doing for us. And in doing so, the person, how they feel about themselves can actually raise dramatically, even if their success is not stupendous. And so that is the key message of Esteem Dynamics is pay attention to your dreams. They can be actualized without any secret sauce. And finally, that if you fall short of the expectations of feedback from the world, you will not fall short of the expectations from yourself if you do it well. And that's what we try to get people to do.
It's fantastic, right? And just as we were chatting earlier, I've been trying to get this TV series happening for 3 years, so I can't just sit here and wait and them chapping on my door. So I thought, okay, I have these amazing friends around the world, including yourself, top unbelievable people doing unbelievable work, saving people's lives, working with planetary health, environmental. I'll do it myself. And that's why I started the series, because you know what I do, Doug? I have a piece of string on my desk, and some days I get a little bit frustrated, as we all do. I'm human. And I push the piece of string, and I know it's never going to work, because you can't push a piece of string, and that makes me check on myself and say, don't push it, And one of my little sisters, my wee sister, she keeps saying, if it hasn't happened, it's not the right time. I say, but I'm getting older, So, yeah, all these things help. But what you just explained there, in the steam dynamics is just so simple for people to understand. And I know the audience around the world are going to love this. Cognitive dissonance is another huge thing that reigns supreme. I know even when I'm presenting information, to the status quo about diet and the development of disease, and I see clients with cancer and heart disease and diabetes, and they will rationalize and, they will, no, don't go there about the food, it's not the food. So, you tell it like no one else. Can you enlighten the world, Dr. Lisle, in understanding why the chicken crossed the road? Because nobody else can do it like you.
Well, we know why the chicken crossed the road. It's just to get to the other side, right? But then nobody asks, well, why does it want to get to the other side, right? So we start to find out that there's always reasons behind these sort of timeless struggles that people have.
Yeah.
So when people, for example, they want to get better, but they're not actually doing the behavior that they know would help them get better. They want a girlfriend, but they're not doing anything about actually doing anything to get the girlfriend. They would like their career to move forward, but they're not doing the things that might be related. There's reasons for this, and that's because they're in what we're going to call dissonance. They've actually got a very interesting way to think of the mind. We assume that the mind is all integrated and there's a thing called us. And in fact, when they study people, they ask them, where are you? They will tell them, well, I'm about 1.5 inches back from my eyeballs, kind of like there's a little spot right about, they all point to the same spot, right about there, right? That's when they go into people's brains and they look at brain surgery, there's no little person right there, okay? But that's what it feels like. And but the truth is, the mind is actually a set of what we're going to call independent neural circuits. Mm-hmm. So you've got a part of your mind right now is judging the gravity of you against your seat. Another part is judging the temperature in the room. And another part is scanning how much time we have left. Another part is thinking a little bit about your husband and what's going on with him today. Like, your mind is very complicated. It's essentially a network of a bunch of different computers. And so sometimes those computers will come up with different conclusions. Okay? And that's where it gets interesting. Now, the thing is that they're designed to fight out those conflicts and to settle it. That's what they are. There's a board of directors in there that essentially says, well, what's the most important thing for us to be doing right now? And that's what takes over. And usually that's beautiful. And it's a beautiful system. This is why a rabbit that's hungry starts to leave his little rabbit hole. But if he smells enough concentration of predator, he's going to go back in the rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. So even though he's hungry and getting pushed to leave, he also is getting pushed back in the rabbit hole. And those instincts and that integration is actually beautiful. It's unbelievably good. And that's true for humans as well, except if you mess it up. And the way we mess up that integration is, you can imagine, let's suppose that the rabbit really likes carrots, smell of carrots. What we do is we put out an artificially concentrated smell of carrots. See? What if we do that? Then what the problem is that he may feel compelled to leave the rabbit hole, even though he can also smell predator. And so he makes a mistake because we've actually altered the system. And this is what the modern food supply is.
Yeah.
Modern food supply is essentially what we're going to call supernormal stimuli that are pulling the rabbit out of the hole. It's pulling us into situations where we're putting things into us that are now out of balance with our natural history. And so if we look around people and we see people struggling, they're getting too much food, they're getting too much rich food, is what it is that they're getting. And it's fundamentally not their fault. They have a natural system that was designed to balance these cognitive dissonant states and to balance when it's time to get up and leave and when I've had enough to eat and how many cherries to eat. All that is supposed to be beautifully orchestrated and would be. But now that we've doctored the environment up and distorted it, now people are having a lot of trouble with this, and it's hard to learn our way out of it.
It's just quite incredible. I mean, the most important ingredient to health and healing beyond applying basic sound medical treatments is what lies at the end of your fork, right? And I know in The Pleasure Trap, your hugely successful book, you provide detailed advice on how to recognise the patterns of the trap in your own life or the traps in your own life and overcome the negative influences. And you also explain beautifully the unexpected twists in the relationship between happiness and pleasure and why so many lives are ruined because of it. So if we're poorly equipped psychologically to understand, then for me it's the excesses in the diets, it's not the deficiencies. And it's just as you've said, Dr. Lisle, it's people are dying of excess, they're not dying of deficiencies, you know. And we have 1 billion people starving to death and 1 billion people eating themselves to death, and it's like, how can we bring this balance? Because that's why I love teaching yin and yang. It's just so beautifully expressed about the spiral. So,
Yes.
could you talk a little bit about dopamine, the neurotransmitter that gives us all that hit that we want to feel fantastic with? I wrote a book, not like you. I mean, I'm the office junior in comparison to you. But I wrote an ebook about freedom from cravings for my clients, which is hugely helpful. But your work on dopamine and how you profess to put that across is just fantastic. Could you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, you should consider yourself a little slave. There's a little guy inside of you that's a spoiled brat and just absolutely wants what he wants or wants what she wants. And she wants like the sweetest candy in the store. And that's because of the chemical dopamine, which is essentially a very close analog to a calorie counter. Okay, so the more calories per inch in your mouth that a food has, the more dopamine is going to be released. It's essentially helping your mind to make decisions in a natural setting about which apple you should eat. So should you eat the apple that's a little bit sour? It's going to turn out that one might have about 9 calories in that bite. Or you should eat the one that is sweet that has 10 calories. So literally 1 calorie difference in your mouth is enough for you to spit out the sour apple or to eat the sweet one. So now I want people to picture that same bite, if it's not out of an apple, but if it's out of a piece of chocolate, a piece of chocolate is about 10 times the calorie density of an apple. So it would be the difference between 9 calories of a sour apple, 10 calories of a good apple, or 100 calories of chocolate. So you can imagine if 1 calorie makes the difference between those two, what an extraordinary experience it is to go from 10 calories in your mouth to 100. And this is dopamine. This is dopamine now essentially cascading like a fireworks show, screaming to the organism, this is what we should be doing, this is what we should be doing, oh my God, what is this, okay? And so I don't fault people when they struggle with the pleasure trap because I can understand it not only from my own personal experience, obviously. We have all felt the hole. We all know what this, essentially how difficult it is to make good decisions. For people to know, though, what's useful is a lot of your life is being run on memory. So you don't realize this, but like, where are my car keys? Where are we going to eat today? What am I up to today? Who's my husband? Your memory is actually close to running your life, even though you don't understand, you don't see it. And so it turns out that your memories are images that you are recording So right now you can have a picture of your husband in your mind. You can also have a picture of maybe clothes that you considered wearing earlier today but didn't put on. You know what I'm saying? You're like, okay, I was thinking about wearing the black thing. So you actually conjure up images. And one of the most important things you do is you conjure up images about food. So when you're thinking about eating, your mind scans memory circuits thinking about food, and then where we're going to get it. And the problem is that if you eat supernormal food, those images are very vivid for a while. So if we eat a chunk of chocolate today, that memory is going to be really vivid for the next 2 or 3 days. And so it's going to be very likely that when we think about food, we're going to be thinking about that chocolate again. And therefore, if we eat it again, it's going to be vivid again for another 2 or 3 days. So people will find that healthy living goes in streaks. Because if they can get on a good path for a while, what happens is that even though that huge surge of dopamine really seared memory in for a while, if we get away from the junk food, even for a few days, it starts to fade. The memories start to fade and they become less potent in organizing our behavior. And therefore, so the fight to get out of the pleasure trap isn't usually some huge process. It's a short-term, fairly intense process. But within a few days, you can climb out. The problem is you're always susceptible to getting tugged back in. And then once we're tugged back in, we're usually on a little problematic roll until we break out. So it's a very interesting little process, but the more we understand the process, the more you can grit your teeth and dig your way out of the pleasure trap to the life you deserve.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I know with the STEAM Dynamics, you facilitate the pursuit of all this with clients of your, that come to you for private counselling and all sorts of things. You reveal the heart and soul really to human life process, which is very, very important for many people. And, that includes for me more effective ways of competing for the legitimate esteem of others and points the way to rather obvious and powerful truths. But I like to just simplify my wee body if I can and say, I get up in the morning, I'm excited about life, I've got work to do, I dream big, I've had a business plan in my bag for 7 years, I take it everywhere, every country I've taught in. If it's not working, we say we have to change it and we move somewhere else, and you have to just keep going, right? Because when you have a mission or a vision, I think that's what I try and encourage my clients to have, Doug, to make them be excited and believe that life can be what they want it to be. And it starts with the food, doesn't it? I see so much depression, because of the sugar and the food that they're eating. So if we have a goal, I could talk to you forever, but we're out of time, and the TV company want me to keep the interviews to 30 minutes. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, from everybody here in Scotland, everybody that's listening around the world. And we are definitely going to get you organised to come over here and change the face of Scotland, the UK, of Ireland. We could do a wee tour, right? Would you be fine to do that?
It would be a great joy.
It would be
great
fantastic.
Fun.
And I'm sorry I haven't been in California for quite a long time. And the next time I'm there, if I get there before you come here, then we'll get together, have lunch and make a big plan.
Fantastic.
And I want to thank you for your time, because I appreciate how very busy you are, and you're full on every day with your own counselling and your own teaching, and you travel so much as well. So thank you for everything you do in the world, for the people that you help, for the education that you put out, and more than anything for the fun and laughter you bring to just the world every day. It's the most important thing for me. So I love you dearly, and I can't wait to get together.
Fantastic. Very, very nice to see you.
Okay. Take care. Lots of love.
Bye.